Thank you, Emily. Really appreciate it. Beautiful music. And welcome, everybody. I think we will make a start, but we'll probably have some more people joining us, which is absolutely fine. My name's Heaven Crawley. I'm director of MIDEQ, which is Migration for Development and Equality. It also has a very long alternative name, which I won't say now, but essentially it's a GCRF UKRI funded project looking specifically at South-South migration, which of course is very much neglected in terms of migration studies. And the slides that you saw at the beginning were really just an overview of some of our work and some of the early findings of the research that we're doing, focusing on migration in the context of the Global South in 6 corridors, which are basically pairs of countries where there is a two-way flow of not just people, but also ideas and resources. And we focus on South-South migration because, of course, so much of migration studies is dominated with a focus on research on migration from the South to the global North, particularly Europe and North America. And we're really interested, of course, in the relationship between not just migration as a process, but its relationship with inequalities of different kinds. We focus in particular on issues of gender, race, age, and of course, poverty, which is a clear vertical inequality which connects very strongly to migration. And we're also interested in the way in which migration intersects with broader contexts. So again, not just the processes themselves, but also the geographical, social, cultural, political context within which migration takes place. So the purpose of this event, and as in line with all of our Share Out events, is to try and think about how migration in the Global South interconnects with other kinds of processes and other kinds of inequalities. We have with us today Meena Poudel, who I'll introduce in a moment. But just to say, by way of format and, if you like, housekeeping, this session is recorded because we like to share the events on our website for those that can't attend. So if you don't want your face to be shown, then just keep yourself off the video. And it's an opportunity, as I say, to learn about some of the work that not just people in the project are doing, but people who are connected with the project in various ways. So as I say, we're very pleased to have today with us Meena Poudel. Meena is currently based in Kathmandu. She's a sociologist with a long and very committed history of development work, research and feminist activism. She's worked on issues affecting the lives of socially excluded and politically marginalized groups in Nepal, but also in other areas of the South, Southeast and Central Asia, Western Europe and North Africa. And she's worked with a wide range of different organizations, including Oxfam, USAID, UN systems and academia. Meena will tell you much more about her work, I'm sure, but one of the reasons why we really wanted to have her present at our Share Out is that Meena's a very active member of our MIDEQ advisory board, but often when people are involved in those sort of roles, we don't necessarily get to know much about what they actually do. And I'm sure we can learn lots from our advisory board members. So I'm very delighted to have Meena with us today. Meena is hopefully not going to have any internet problems. I know my internet connection is a little bit unstable, but Meena is also in a situation where there's rain, which never helps wherever you are. So hopefully we won't have any issues. Meena's going to be talking about some of her work on trafficking of women from Nepal to India and the consequences of that for those women. And very delighted to have her with us. Meena's going to speak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for comments, discussion, or general feedback. So thank you, Meena.
Of any use.
Thank you. Shall I start now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, can you hear me properly? Because I'm a bit worried about internet.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Everybody else is on mute, that will help. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Heaven, and thank you, colleague, and welcome to the discussion. And just to add a few lines that what Heaven has said, that I'm so delighted to be part of this MIDEQ team. It's a great team and great people and the great work they have been doing. And even being a member of advisory team, I don't feel I'm part of the member of advisory team. I feel that I'm part of the project itself. So basically I want to engage more and more, learn more from colleagues, and also share my my work. So Yeah, based in Kathmandu at the moment. My posting is Libya, International Organization for Migration, and but because of the various, well, before Libya, I was in Afghanistan for 3.5 years, so I just decided to take a break, and I'm on sabbatical now. That is basically allowing me to engage more with MIDEQ and learn from colleagues. So the research I'm going to share with you today it was part of my post PhD project funded by ESRC when I was doing my PhD in Newcastle University. So the couple of years back, I conducted this large research focusing on forced migration as a form of trafficking. When we talk about trafficking, is still people think that is traditional concept of trafficking, but now things have changed because of the liberalization of economic policy and the movement, communication, and also organized crime and all these things. And of course, that the whole concept of border security and controlling people's movement for livelihood and socio-cultural region, particularly focusing on India and Nepal. So in terms of the gender, all research participants were women, and because I was looking at how sexuality, concept of sexuality and sexuality interact with the life of the trafficked women when they return from various forms of trafficking. Of course, this dominant forms of trafficking is the sexual and labor, and how it is linked with the money, power, poverty, as Heaven mentioned that the social exclusion and poverty issue is very high here, and also the violence. And when I say violence, is more physical violence, emotional violence, and the state-sponsored violence, and also the other forms of violence. I just wanted to look at that, how these various elements come together and impact life of the women who left trafficking already. So I interview women age 20 to 37, and at least women who return from at least one form of migration. Some women, they return from multiple forms, but at least one form. That was my criteria. So return where? It's not home, actually. Return to Nepal, because yes, they returned to Nepal, they crossed the border, came back, but there was no home for these women. There were no family members and anybody for women because of that is what I'm going to dig out today, that how social stigma is being constructed and how our cultural practices and political processes and also the social surroundings and the social relationship actually contributing to a stigma and making women outsider within their family, within their society, within their neighborhood, also within a state. Because as you know that Nepal, now we are secular and a republic, but last 10, 15 years only. But Nepal has been very much impacted by various forms of Hindu interpretation of religion. Various forms I'm saying because women I have interviewed, most of them, almost all, they came from Hindu religious background, but various forms. For example, in southern part of the country, bordering to India, they follow Indian version of Hinduism, and in the north, they form Nepali version of Hinduism, which is very much mixed with the Buddhism and the Tibetan Buddhism. So that's what I'm saying. That also actually these interpretation and these forms actually contribute to construct a stigma and to conceptualize sexuality and binary of bad and good to women, because it's a more Buddhist dominant version of Hinduism is less complicated and little bit relaxed for women and supportive to women, but southern part, the very much conservative form of Hinduism is much more complicated and totally is not. Women are not accepted by the family once they are known or seen or perceived they return from trafficking. And that also brings us to think about trafficking is seen from only the sexual purpose perspective, because there are various forms, as I mentioned, we know that, but even women return from India across the border, working in hotel or working in the road construction, road maintenance and housing construction, they were seen as kind of, women return from sexual sector. So that's how the religion and sexuality coming together and making their life complicated. And once they, as I mentioned, that this binary of good and bad, the question is, I was asking women, who defines this bad and good? What are the criteria? And when you are good and when you are bad for your family, for your neighborhood, and for your friends and colleagues. And then they were good before they left home, because they were honest, they were with their family, they were control their livelihood, their life, their everything was monitored and controlled by the male guardian, whether it's a father or husband or brother. When you left home, and then now the people started looking you at kind of, okay, strange, and then when you return and then you become a bad. So that's how the women were telling me that before I left I was good, now I'm returned, I'm bad. That's why I'm not accepted by the family. And most of the women I interviewed, they were in the street, and most of them were hiding because well, they were not accepted by their family. There was no home, and also where they go, and then all the criminal gangs and lack of support, almost zero support from social surroundings, and also the forget about the state mechanism, because these most of the women I have interviewed, they trafficked before they were 16, 18, and the time I interviewed, they were early 20s and mid 20s or early 30s. In Nepali law, I think the most of the country in the world that the citizenship age is 16. Here also 16, and before 16 you left home, and then when you come back you are over 16. But because you return from trafficking, you are not accepted by family, means you are not getting citizenship, because the Nepali citizenship law is very much is a patronized, it's a very masculine, it's a patriarchal, because you need your male guardian's endorsement and an application, because either you're primarily from your father. If you don't have father, if you are married, your husband. If you are not married, if you don't have father, your elder brother. Anyway, the so-called head of the family or the male member of the family has to endorse your citizenship application, then only you get it. But for traffic women, this was beyond their imagination, beyond their possibility of that they will get, because they are not accepted. So, and then the nexus of violence, and this stigma remains all over the life, because when they return, some women I have interviewed, they were doing amazing work. They were independent. They were doing some livelihood activities, supporting their own life, even family not accepted. But the stigma is always they live with the stigma all the time, because and some of the women, interestingly, that I just wanted to share with you, well, the two women, they committed suicide before I analyzed my data. The time I interviewed, they were very, very upset, and they were very much stigmatized, and they were upset. And the time I analyzed data, they committed suicide because they just couldn't cope with the stigma. No family, no home, no friendship, no society, nothing, no state, no support mechanism where they will go. Either you go back to the street, or you just cope with the whatever options are available. And you see there is no option available, you commit suicide. That was situation there more. And then these women were saying that I also interviewed some of their parents who refuse to welcome their family member back home. I interview father and also husband, and they were saying that she's dead already. I don't have any my daughter, she's dead. But daughter is there. And he was saying that she's dead already. We already cremated her. We finished everything, all the rituals, everything based on Hindu, she's dead. And husband was saying same thing, she's dead. I have my another wife. Okay, that was situation. And this type of women, and see the situation, there is no option left for these women. Now, after 5, 6 years of this research I have done, the situation is more or less remain the same, because we have Republican setup, we have federalism, we have so many development plans. I mean, so many policies, this and that, and rights and wrong, but basically, practically, the socio-cultural perception and socio-cultural practices are basically the same to these women. And and then also some of the women, they well, couple of women I interviewed, 2 women, they died, they committed suicide, and few women, they adopted coping strategy, coping mechanism. What was that? Women who were married before trafficking, they remarried. Women who were not, they married. And then I was asking them why you decided to go for marriage, because yeah, some of the women I interviewed, actually they were sold by their husband previously. And then I said, again, you decided to go for remarrying because you told me that you were sold by your husband and you suffer a lot, and then abusive relationship, you wanted to run away from abusive relationship, you got into this nexus, and now you are back again, going back to the same modality of coping strategy, which do you think is not going to be abusive? And they were saying that, she was saying that, well, I don't have any option because I need citizenship card. If I marry, society will not look at me down and I will get citizenship. And I know it's not going to be happy marriage, but this is only option left if I want to continue my life. And I was just wondering when I was interviewing them and thinking that, and various feminist literature about this abusive relationship and the whole concept of marriage and whole concept of family, particularly focusing on South Asia. And I was just thinking and reflecting upon, I mean, see, they were, I mean, the leaving home was not their decision. They were forced into this nexus. And forget about the abuse and the exploitation and all the violence they experienced when they were in trafficking situation. Back home, there is no home and the bigger society. And again, they go back to the same nexus of stigma, I mean, humiliation, violence, and everything. And then now again get into this abusive relationship. So the whole cycle is running, and again and again and again, there is no way out. And then I was thinking that when I was analyzing data, that the whole concept of same, because I asked their parents, and also I asked women, why rejection? Why not welcoming your own blood? And they say, oh, she's bringing shame to my family, and my God will be very unhappy if I accept her. And luckily, I mean, amazingly, some of the family, they were very, very happy, particularly the ethnic community, non-Hindu ethnic community. In Middle Hill, they were very happy to welcome their female member who returned. They were saying that, okay, that was your luck, bad luck. Now you are okay. You are, at least you are back. You are still alive. Come home and don't repeat this mistake. They were trying to do that. But the neighborhood, actually, they imposing them on restrictions, saying that you are not allowed to take water from the public tap. You are not allowed to come to the health post. You are not, your children are not allowed to go to school, that our children are there. So basically even some of the family, exceptionally some of the family agreed to accept their family member, the female member returned from trafficking. The wider society neighborhood reject them. So see the nexus and the layers of rejection, layers of stigma. Whole family is being stigmatized, and they had to either kick your female member out refuse, reject her, or you leave the village. So, and they were talking about the whole issue of the same and honor, because we need to protect our honor, and a good and bad, the concept of construction of same, honor, good, bad. This is very complex and very interesting way they put women as a center of the whole discourse, and then create all this concept and link with the sexuality, because she slept with a man which was not her husband, and we don't know how many men she slept with, and then now she's bringing shame to our family. So this is, and I was looking at how sexuality is actually is being constructed, and how that was the follow-up research, which I'm not including here. Follow-up research was basically looking at how this concept of same, stigma, good, bad, and the social perception on sexuality actually contributing to women's livelihood, women who experience trafficking, how they are going to survive, where they can earn their livelihood. Is there any market recruiting them? Is there any job available for them? How they are going? Even some women came back with a child, and then where is support mechanism? State has nothing. State is also rejecting them, not giving them citizenship. You don't get citizenship means you don't get anything. No, forget about all this voting right, big political right, civil and political right, but basically you don't get even daily wages, you don't get room renting, you don't get paracetamol from the hospital or health post, and you get nothing. So and then how, even if you want to do little vendoring at the street, police will come and remove you from the street. So this is situations basically for these women, nothing left in this earth. So now I was follow-up research was very much focusing on what are the livelihood options for available for these women. This was this issue, the livelihood issue, I picked up and look at the livelihood and link with the citizenship and all the political process, because Nepal was moving very fast on democratization process that time, 2014-15. So, and what do we mean by democratization process for these women? What are the civil and political rights left for these women? And what are the livelihood options available for these women? Is there any state? There is no family, there is no home, which is clear, but is there any state? Literally no. And then what? So to me, it's an extreme form of violence and extreme form of social rejection. And I don't know whether it comes under bigger social exclusion issue. Is more than exclusion, completely rejection. So this is what I just wanted to share with you. And there are a few slides there just to summarize, and I'm going to request Heaven to share why, again, whole issue is that why these women are put at the bottom of the whole social stigma framework. So the next one. Yeah, this is basically what I was trying to argue here, the socio-cultural construction of womanhood. See, the cultural obligation, duties you have, and then your responsibility to protect Ijat is basically honor of family, or his honor, not her. His means her father or husband or brother. And then the continuation of generation, which is, I mean, global phenomena as well, and the sexual pleasure to him, husband. And then in the exchange of that, you get honor and protection. You are seen as a perfect wife, and you subordinate to him, and honor as good women you get. If you don't follow these rules, if you don't don't come under this kind of conceptual construction, then you are polluted, and your moral perfection, your morality will be questioned. And then my whole discussion was, and the analysis was basically looking at the institutional framework, that what are the institutions playing all this game is family, labor market, community, media, and our state itself. And basically the family is much more that, yeah, in a minute we'll see the slides on the power, sources of power. Family is basically following cultural duties, cultural perception, cultural obligation they are imposing. And community is basically creating social construct, and then creating social perception on these women, rejection or not rejection. And market is basically looking at economic part. There is no economic opportunity. There are no jobs available for these women. And state, as I mentioned, this is more political legal institution, not even issuing citizen, not accepting them as their citizen. So, and then this is what we see here in Nepal from the sociological perspective, feminist perspective, and also from trafficking and migration perspective. Trafficked women's life is basically they are unable to protect honor of family. They are unable to follow the cultural obligation duties they are given by society, and they are unable to serve their husband as good wife, and then nothing left. Next, please. This is for women and men. This is not new. Everywhere we see this situation, socio-cultural construction of man, that man should be aggressive, independent, economical, breadwinner, head of the family. I mean, everything is coming, and the head of the family and successor of the family. For this type of man, the head of the family, successor of the family, these women are the traffic returning women are not compatible, not qualified. So that is why they are being rejected. So I just mentioned that I interviewed one of the husband. He was saying that she did, and I got another wife. I remarried, and the father was telling me that she's dead already. I have finished her cultural rituals and everything. So, and these are the institutions. I just wanted to put that institutional framework to analyze how institutions are actually playing institutional power, how institutional powers are actually controlling women's life, and deciding whether she is member of family, member of society, member of state or not. The next, please. And then here, this is important slide. I think this gives everything here. This is what I have been using for my classes and everywhere. The key gender issue in contemporary Nepal means that this, I'm talking Nepal, that there is still legal subordination to men. As I say that any women, my citizenship was recommended by my father. It has his name there, because otherwise, if I do something wrong, then he can just throw it away, and I will be stateless immediately. This is situation. Legal subordination. Actually, when we were drafting 2015, I was in the middle of this research when country was drafting 2015 new constitution, Republic Constitution. We raised this issue. We did everything we could, lobbying and the seminars and the writing and the national level debate. We engaged with the parliamentarian as well, the constituent assembly members as well. To remove that very patronized and very patriarchal provision in citizenship, but we couldn't do that, we failed. There is a little bit progress that at least they agree to add mother's name as well. When father is going to recommend, we have mother's name as well since 2015, but before that it was not there as well. And then my citizenship card has no my mother's name, but at least 2015 constitution has provision. But in practice, they included in constitution fundamental right provision in constitution, but laws, bylaws, and all the guidelines are yet to be drafted. So the authority, local authority, the citizenship issuing authority, they don't issue. They don't follow. They say that, okay, I don't have laws and bylaws. Then when there is no citizenship, as I mentioned, economic dependent to men, because you have to rely on him to survive completely. And then your duty is the cultural obligation to preserve Ijat, whether you are daughter or sister or wife or mother. your role is to protect, to preserve culture, to protect your family, to do all good thing for family. The good thing means the social concept, the social perception of good. And then everything coming together, and your position is always lower than man. So this is what, and these are not, I put arrow in both sides, these are all interconnected. And then it's not that this is first, second, there is no sequence, they are all interlinked. And that's what I'm saying, the legal subordination linked with the state, economic dependency linked with the market and job and the labor market, cultural obligation, very much cultural things, and coming from the negative narratives of religion, negative interpretation of religion, in all religion. Is a dominant by Hindu, but all religion they are practicing, and the social position is basically the bigger societal framework. So this is the framework I have been using. I mean, many of my research, not only this one, I find very interesting. Last slide, please. And yeah, sources of power. This is just summary. Sources of power, as I mentioned, the cultural things coming from family, God, all those things, and social, bigger community, economic and market and political state. So these are, again, as I said, that the legal subordination, economic dependency, how they're interconnected. These sources of power are also playing mutually contributing to construct stigma and to decide to rejection or acceptance to women who experience trafficking. And last point, I mentioned that this was cross-border research. So even within Nepal, women trafficked to Kathmandu or bigger city from the remote area, situation is more or less the same. That means it's nothing to do with the border, but thing to do with the border of your family boundary, that you leave community, you leave home, go somewhere else, not endorsed by your, or they don't know what are you doing, where are you living, and what are you doing, and you come back home. If this whole process, the mobility process and the livelihood process, is not endorsed by so-called head of the family man, and then your identity, your sexuality, your everything will be challenged. So I stop here, and then maybe we'll go for question and answer discussion. Thank you for listening. I'm not sure I'm on time or not. I think it's
no,
okay.
you're perfectly on time, Meena. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Just to say, I mean, I said at the beginning that the reason why we invite our advisory board members and others to participate in these events is because we get to learn so much about what our advisory board members do. And it's great, Meena, to finally learn more about your own work. And I thought it was a very fascinating presentation, not least because you talk so little about migration itself and so much about the broader sort of socio-political and cultural context within which migration, or in this case, the consequences of certain kinds of migration, are experienced. And I thought the complex intersections of religion, gender, sexuality, those are exactly the sorts of things that we need to be able to unpack and understand in order to be able to really grapple with the consequences of these migration processes. And I mean, you started by talking about the conceptualization of trafficking and describing it as a form of forced migration. I think that in itself is interesting and may open up other questions. But I think what's really interesting about your presentation is how different it is to many of the presentations we hear and many of the talks we hear about trafficking, which focus almost entirely sometimes on the process of being trafficked and all the kind of governmental responses to it, rather than how the experience of trafficking is embedded within these broader contexts and can only be understood in terms of the consequences of understanding those contexts. I have a whole bunch of questions myself, but I'm also aware that there are some in the chat. We've got plenty of time. So I think Maria Rose and Nicola, you had some questions. One about the kind of, well, they're both related to the sort of issues of citizenship and resistance, I guess, in terms of lawyers. And I think Tim's got a question too. So Maria Rose, do you want to ask your question first, then Nicola, then Tim?
Thank you so much. Hi, Meena. I was wondering about the fact of becoming stateless, of being stateless. In your last sentence, you eventually mentioned that often the migration is within the borders of Nepal. Because I was wondering, if you are stateless and you don't have the citizenship, how, and you are trafficked, for example, to India, how you can travel back to Nepal? So I was wondering how the movement can happen.
Yes, a very short answer. Yes, because with India 1950 treaty, this post-colonial, or when British left that time, the treaty is that we don't need passport to travel to India. They don't need. So it's a free mobility. It's a 1950 friendship treaty. So yes, you can come back. You can go there. They are here as migrant. We are there as a migrant. It doesn't make any sense of citizenship. It's just crossing like one city to another city.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Maria Rose?
Yeah, sure. And if they go to another state, let's say they're trafficked to another country, how they can come back to Nepal? Or you don't have any case, a scenario of that type?
No, we have like some women trafficking to India was very easy. Now the trafficking to Middle East and other country also easy through migration process. But you need passport, but that is another form of trafficking. It's like trafficking through migration process. They need passport and they need they come back with a passport. So yes, except India, you need passport to travel elsewhere. In that case, you don't see. I think this is whole concept of stateless and issue between Nepal and India has no meaning, but other country, yes. But now through India, the basically the smuggling happening via India to other country, and the smuggler, they sell passport in Delhi and big transit point in India. So that is also happening in smuggling form.
Thanks, Meena. I know we have other questions, but I just wondered, as a point of clarification, how are you using trafficking in this context? How are you using it as being different to smuggling in terms of because it seems unusual what you're describing, people traveling on passports and returning on passports.
Yeah, in Nepali context, the trafficking is, we use the optional protocol definition, UN optional protocol definition. And then so when there is a force, coercion, all this fake document and by force, so that is trafficking. But the smuggling, the time they leave home, they see themselves as a migrant. On the way, when they cross the border, they go to India, they prepare all this, they buy document is smuggling. And when they get into destination, again, they become a traffic, because the way they are being used in Dubai and elsewhere. And then they don't get what they were told, and they don't get what they were expected. So to me, it's a new form of slavery.
Okay, that's important, because I think sometimes people have a very particular view of what trafficking is, and what you're describing is a much more mixed set of scenarios. But the bottom line is whether or not people feel they're free to make choices, albeit constrained by their circumstances. Thank you. Nicola, then Tim, and then Gamali.
Yes, thank you. Meena, fascinating presentation and fantastic research you're doing. It's really, really interesting. I was wondering, on when you talked about returning traffic victims' inability to get citizenship and legal aspects and processes around that. I was wondering, partly because MIDEQ is also sort of grappling with the theory of change, right, which obviously is also in itself very complex. But under this heading of theory of change, I was wondering about lawyers' role as change agents or agents of change. So I was wondering if there are any activist lawyers who presumably, would also have to be feminists, activist feminist lawyers who try to campaign on behalf of these women and try to campaign to have the law changed.
Yes, and that part I didn't cover, that there are so many very critical, very strong NGOs, and of course lawyer group, Women's Lawyer Association, human rights lawyers, and the various independent lawyers, they are also fighting for this. when we were drafting constitution, we were all together. We formed kind of big alliance to ensure that these women, not only these women of this type, there are so many other persons as well internally, also the traditionally sex workers and all those things. So we try, yes. And another important part, this thank you, Nicola, for bringing this issue. Actually, after all this feminist, human rights lawyer, media, and the contribution, and NGOs contribution, and also the researchers' academic contribution, the trafficked women who were rejected from the family, the long back, actually they formed their own union. They formed their own organization, and some of the women I have interviewed, they are also part of the forming that organization, and now new members joining who are not accepted, who are in difficult situation back home when they return. The group called Shakti Samo, which is Power Group in English, and it's the first South Asian NGO formed by trafficked women themselves. It's a very powerful now. Well, initially there is a long story how they become a powerful, and there are the activist feminist role is great, and also the some of the donors also contributing a lot to help them to get their own little union. Now this group registered under NGO Act, actually they are challenging, still challenging government through Ministry of Women, Children, Social Welfare, and the Ministry of Labor. Those are responsible for this issue, to change laws and to draft bylaws and the various guidelines. To be honest with you, I'm so happy to hear that after so many years working on this issue, Ministry of Women, they have a cross-ministerial trafficking monitoring body sitting at the Ministry of Women. Actually, these trafficked women's organization member of that high-level committee. So that means without their presence, they cannot develop any guideline. That is theory. But in reality, we have to work a lot, and we have to make sure that the decision they made is being implemented. So, but yeah, there are good signs as well. So long way to go, but yeah, I'm quite optimistic.
Thanks, Meena. Great question, Nicola. Thank you for that too. Tim, I think.
Hi, Meena. Thanks
Hi.
ever so much for your fascinating presentation. I'm going to drift away from just Nepal, but I would love your insights from your wealth of experience in South Asia. A bit of background: I first worked in South Asia in 1976. You can tell through the grey hair, but I haven't worked in Nepal yet, or Afghanistan, although I've got many friends there. Worked mainly in various parts of India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and particularly in Pakistan. And until in the last few years, I started working in Pakistan, I thought I had a reasonably holistic view. And the issue I'm interested in is your interface between sort of religion and sexuality and trafficking, but in the context of my own work on actually examining ways through which digital technology is used for sexual harassment and violence against women. And in my overly simplistic view, I've sort of come to feel there are certain South Asian characteristics which are overlain by the various different religions that have come to dominate. And I've become absolutely fascinated with the role of Islam in Pakistan, particular forms of Islam, and I don't think I've ever felt the power of patriarchy anywhere in the world more than I have there, and I'm struggling very much with trying to understand this relationship that you've touched on between religion and violence against women, I had thought sort of when I started working again in Pakistan that this was more difficult in Pakistan than in, but as I go back to India and other parts of the subcontinent as well, I can see traces. So both are feeding off each other. And I would just wonder if you've got something from all your huge amount of work to help me unravel that. I mean, it's too easy just to say intersectionality and all the rest of it. How you cope with some kind of South Asian identity, which is, certainly from my reading, I think it is definitely, pre-colonial or pre, Western European colonial. There's something deep there. But there's also something deep in different religions and the ways in which different religions intersect with that. So a long question, but it's sorry about that. It's just, if you've got any insights to help my struggle, because it is such an important issue.
I know. Thank you, Tim. I fully agree with you. I mean, I work in Bangladesh, I work in Sri Lanka, and Nepal, of course, my own country, and Pakistan as well, and Afghanistan. Almost 4 years in Afghanistan, and now in Libya. My goodness, all this various interpretation of their own religion. And maybe I will start from my own narrative. I'm single in this age. I find difficult to deal with my family. And because they see me like something wrong with me, because I'm not, I was born in Hindu, but I came from Lumbini, which is Buddha's birthplace. Born in Hindu family, very much following on Buddhism, philosophy, all those things, because of, we were from that area. But still, always the question is that my parents are always worried about my security and safety, because I'm not protected by man. Because I travel a lot, and I'm independent, I'm earning, I'm supporting my parents, but still they feel that I'm kind of incomplete women, and I need protection mechanism I don't have, so they are worried about me. So this is what, to me, this is what the interpretation of religion. There is nothing written anywhere, or legally I'm protected. I don't have to, they don't have to worry about me, but this is the, in our culture, and the daughters are our, something given by God, and we have to protect them, because otherwise God will be unhappy and will do something wrong, something bad. So, and what you were saying, that I found similar thing in Afghanistan as well, when I was dealing with both the Dari and Pashto community, neighboring to Central Asia, and I also work with Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all those Islamic countries as well. Their interpretation of Islam and Afghan interpretation of Islam, and we also have Islamic Muslim community in Nepal, our interpretation of Islam, and the Pakistani interpretation of Islam, now the Libyan interpretation of Islam. My goodness, all very different, but the similarity I see, very thin line, is that their perception on female sexuality. That is the key thing. Make sure that your sexuality is not challenged by any man, which is not your husband. Similar thing I found in Azerbaijan as well, but that is less rigid. And I asked Uzbek and Azari colleague, my colleague, and you are also Islam. You are saying that Islamic Republic, blah, 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 and you are following all this Islamic. Why your Islam is so liberal than Afghan Islam? They said that, Soviet destroy our Islam. And then the Pakistani colleague saying that, Allah will be unhappy, so we have to follow that. So see, I think to me, the level of conservativeness and the interpretation of their own homegrown interpretation, the definition, I don't know what is that. I think that is complicating things. But as I say, the very commonly shared feature is that all religion, my own parents' religion or religion I was born into, and Islam, and all religion, I see that the key feature is the sexuality, how they see sexuality. There I think I think the problematic. I'm not sure I was able to respond to your question, but I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
how complicated it is.
It's a conversation for another occasion sometime. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Meena. Gamli's got his hand up, but I wonder whether Meena, I might ask a follow-on question, sorry, Gamli, about religion, because it's interesting that in your presentation and in the response to Tim's question, you didn't mention patriarchy. And I was wondering, for me, patriarchy is the lens through which ultimately religion, it kind of manifests itself. So if we want to say the hierarchy of inequalities or a hierarchy of structural mechanisms, then to me, you have patriarchy, and then religion sort of adapts itself accordingly to be able to. But I was interested in the fact that you didn't mention patriarchy in your presentation. I wondered whether as a concept, because it's so sort of loaded with sort of Western feminist, if you like, ideology at some levels, and also because patriarchy in the context of the global South has often been used in my own work in terms of refugee issues as a way of sort of positioning the global South as being backward in some way and not able to kind of conform to feminist principles of the West. I wondered whether that was in any way influencing the fact that you didn't privilege patriarchy, or whether it was just something you didn't have time to talk about. It fitted very well with Tim's question.
I think I mentioned a couple of times, but yes, I didn't focus on patriarchy per se. But to me, when I was in UK, 9 years in UK, and working with a colleague, a European and British colleague on the various projects, while I was doing PhD and post-PhD project, and also the post-colonial feminist and also the southern feminist patriarchy here in particularly in South in a large part of Asia is very much linked with the traditional feudal production system, because all this ownership and the representative of God and how to put it, that patriarchy, if you challenge patriarchy, you are devaluing and not following any religious practices and God, because basically man is your God, either in husband form or father form or brother's form. The head of the family is God because he is feeding you. So it's more feudal. And when I was doing my anthropology degree, I was looking at all this, how this patriarchy is being conceptualized here in South Asian context, which is Hindu dominant, but various religion, layers of interpretation of these things. And when I was in West, so I think in Western, what I may be wrong, but Western in UK, when I was there 8 years, I found that patriarchy is more soft and masculine kind of thing. Here is patriarchy is much more feudal and very conservative things. So that's how I see, and I use based on where I am and which issue I am analyzing and what type of data I have. So yeah.
I think it manifests itself in different ways in the UK for sure. I mean, it's more subtle in the way that racism is sometimes, not always, but sometimes very subtle. But the structures still, in my view, remain. I was also interested in what you had to say about Tibetan Buddhism, because whenever I've worked with the Tibetan community, always there is a claim that there is no gender inequality in the Tibetan community. But we'll come back to that another time, perhaps, as well. Gamali, I stole your spot, so apologies for that. You had a question or a point?
No, that's okay, Heaven. Meena, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
My question is very much related, almost similar to Nicola's question, but from the perspective of cultural interventions. So I was wondering if there are any intervention, whether from people making music or film, either documentary or feature films, or even community theater, to address some of the issues that you raised in your presentation?
Very good question, and it's very interesting strategy to address this issue. Not really. There are few, like the group I mentioned, the feminist group, and some of the progressive media, the critical media, and some of the young emerging theater group, they are trying to address. But the mainstream media, mainstream, all this theater group and the cultural group, they are not. I think what I found is very interesting gap in Nepal is the knowledge gap, because the new generation, they are trying to understand issue, but because we don't have now, the MIDEQ is contributing a little bit, but Anita is here, and we have been struggling to find this academically sound research on this issue. So there are very, very few resources. So the knowledge is very gap. And then, but the young generation, the trafficked women themselves, and the entertainment sector, working women and men, and also LGBTI community, and of course the critical mass is just emerging. They are trying to address, but it's long way to go. I know the theater and the cultural approach is very strong strategy to address, but I think we are not making, we are not advancing the way we want it.
It might be the case that those of us working in Work Program 11 could be of some assistance, whether it's capacity building or just sharing our methods. Yeah, so maybe that's something we can pick up on and discuss with you if you so wish.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. We can discuss with the Nepal team and the Nepal-Malaysia corridor team. We have great team here in Malaysia, so we can discuss that. I think with last month, I guess Anita can correct me that we were having conversation with Alison. So we're also talking about the cultural strategy to change the perception and to help people to understand. So I think that would be something that I'm hoping that's something we can do collectively.
Great idea. Thank you, Gamali, for the question. And yeah, I think it would be a very good opportunity. I wonder, I have noticed that I think all of the Nepal team is on the call. Anita, Indu, Karen, and Priyasha, did you want to contribute anything to the conversation?
Karen is also here.
Yeah, I think Karen's here as well. So I don't know whether any of you want to either add to what Meena said or raise any additional issues. I know we've talked previously about issues of let's call it domestic or familial violence, but more in relation to women who are left behind when male migrant heads of households often go to Malaysia and elsewhere. But was there anything you wanted to add, any of you from the Nepal team? I'm putting you on the spot, I know, for which apologies, but anyway, Anita. Nothing to add.
She has so much to add, I know.
I'd like to give this chance for others to ask questions, and I think I've shared this to you before. We always hijack Meena ma'am into our office whenever we want. She's very kind. She comes to our office. But the other thing is also we are writing to something together for Alison based on the presentation we made.
Brilliant.
And we are trying to publish it in one of the most reputed universities journal in Nepal also, like, to do something. So there's a lot of things coming up. And I mean, regarding what we know, we always have other opportunities to present in MIDEQ. So we'll be presenting those things.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anita, and great to see you all. We do have a bit more time. I don't have any other questions in the chat to pick up, I don't think, but if anybody else wants to raise a question, we have time to do that. Or if there's anything you want to add, Meena, to what you've already said.
I think, no, I think I try to capture all of those.
I have a long list of questions that I just found so much of your presentation interesting, as I say, because it embeds the experience of migration in the context rather than simply looking at it in the abstract or as just to do with the process or what happens when people arrive in countries. We find very much that this model of looking at the sort of corridors, origin countries, particularly in relation to return, of course, works is much more effective at revealing some of these kinds of information, because if you focus only on the destination country, which is what a lot of migration research does, then you often tend to focus on, it seems anyway, within migration studies, the policies in those countries rather than actually what's going on in the context of that. Marija, you have your hand up, so you have the floor.
Yes, thank you.
Please introduce yourself, because we don't know one another.
Yes, my name is Maria, actually, and I'm a doctor in sociology from Goethe University in Frankfurt. I have one question about something that you mentioned at the very beginning at your talk, and I found it very intriguing, and it relates to this dichotomy in stigma, like good and bad. You said that in the period before trafficking, there is strong stigma of being good, and upon the return, it's bad. And my question is, did you record any oscillations, or this dichotomy is very firm? If not, what do you think? What is your explanation that it is so, that there are no oscillations? Because I was quite surprised that the stigma of return of being bad is not perhaps questioned by women of different age? Yeah.
Thank you. It's a good question. That my research participants were around early 2021, if I remember correctly, 21 to 37. But the women I interviewed 27, the time they were trafficked, they were child. I mean, they were children, 12, 13, 14. And women I interviewed, some of them early 20s when they trafficked, that women returned at 37, mid 30. So I think the whole issue is around the social perception on trafficking. I think that is complicating things. Trafficking means traditionally, now people are changing because of the feminist activism researches and the communication, whole migration discourse. The social perception, understanding, social knowledge on trafficking is changing. At least people understand that, policymakers and the public, they understand trafficking is not only sexual. But traditionally, when Nepal was ruled by monarchy, absolute monarchy, during that time and during colonial time also, Nepal never colonized, but when British were in India, that time they used to get women from Nepal to serve their military in Bombay and Calcutta. So that is history linked with the sexual exploitation, sexual services. So the whole trafficking discourse is a dominant discourse, become kind of linked with the sex. And the sex is a taboo, is a stigma. That's how the whole concept of stigma came. And when women leave home, is seen as a deviant, like what the sociological explanation of stigma. I was using that the stigma theory very much. But now the women who return long back, the problem is stigma and rejection they experience. Now the new women, the young women, a little bit educated and vocal, and they can mobilize media, they can fight back. Now the stigma still there, but nature has changed. So at least now parents are not, I don't know, we need to do another research, but I'm not sure parent will say that she is dead already. Maybe that tone it changed now, but few years ago it's not. So that's what I'm saying. The whole issue of sexuality, and to me, the sexuality, at least in Nepal, in my research participant, is linked with the Hindu interpretation of woman. So if you sleep with somebody else, which is not endorsed by your whatever the definition of husband, then you are gone. So this is what, but I hope it will change. But yeah, for your kind information, that the women who return from Middle East, family or wider community, conservative family, they don't know what she was doing there. Also seen differently. Women I mean, all women, they go for as a migrant because they need passport, they fly, they go through the labor permit and all those things, except smuggling part. Some women are seen as, okay, you are bringing money, you are good and you are earning, blah, blah, blah. But if you are not bringing money, if you come with the health issue, if you were not regular, if you are not able to convince your family what you are doing there, not sex, and then you are seen as a suspicion that, oh, what you are doing, we don't know. Maybe you're doing something bad. So I think that the powerful construction of social perception here is so interesting and complex.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. It actually really makes sense, because I was wondering if the part of remittances and like being like good because you're supporting your family might change or oscillate some of the stigma. And of course, it makes sense, like regarding like taboo of like sex outside of marriage in the context of your research. It makes sense that, yeah, but thank you for your explanation. Real fascinating.
I found
research.
similar
Thank
situation in Afghanistan as well. When I was there, I was doing national research on trafficking in Afghanistan, because they never did in the past. And we found similar thing, that the women who returned from Pakistan, Iran, they were seen differently. Women who returned from Dubai, they were seen differently. So level of stigmas are there, but various forms.
Thanks, Maria. Great question. Thank you, Meena, for the answer. I guess there's also this kind of intersection or overlap between the kind of narratives of good migrants, bad migrants. I mean, more generally, there's a good migrant, bad migrant narrative, isn't there? And then you have this kind of good woman, bad woman. I wonder, I mean, do those overlap in obvious ways, or really does it come down to things like, as you say, the kind of assumptions about what people are doing? If you bring in money, you become a good migrant by default, even if you're a woman.
Exactly. I mean, money is accepted, but you are not.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Maria Rosa, I think you have another question. You had your hands up. Or a point.
Thank you. Yeah. Just a quick question. You were mentioning that Evan was asking about the difference between trafficking and smuggling, and the fact that basically there is a bit of a mix, is not exactly only one way or another. So it may be difficult to distinguish clearly. But I was wondering if the family, if the family of origin knows that the women had been trafficked versus there was a case of smuggling, there will be a different reaction towards the returnee. In the case I've been trafficked and it was completely against my will, whatever happened, versus a situation where I want to migrate and then eventually I'm ready to pay and go the illegal way to reach my destination and to try my luck. Is there a different perception and reaction from the family of origin?
Yes, there are different perception and reaction. That trafficking means, again, that they see very traditional way that trafficking means disappear without their approval. But when you smuggle or migrant, at least you get a level of endorsement from your family. You don't know whether you are smuggling or not, but when you leave home, you are migrant. On the way, you get into smuggling nexus. There is very thin line to differentiate, and again, you get into trafficking and destination. So. But here the issue is that the core issue is that when you leave your home, the mobility is endorsed, approved by your family or not. This is how it works. If it was endorsed, there is an expectation as well. When you get endorsement, you are expected to send them money. So they see that, oh, she went for a job and now sending money. She's nice. She's not bad woman. But it was not endorsed. You just disappear or follow or get into the nexus, criminal nexus, or you are not being able to send anything, and then you are gone.
Thank you. Interesting. And I suspect when you say endorsed by the family, what you really mean is endorsed by the male in the family.
Yeah,
presumably.
the father, husband, or your brother.
Yeah, exactly.
They are the decision makers. Yeah.
Yeah. Catherine, I imagine your question follows on or is related.
It's actually not. It's a little bit of a tangent. Thanks, Evan, and thanks so much, Meena. That was such a fascinating presentation and great discussion. And I've been following your work for a long time. Because I'm a former colleague of Diane Richardson at Newcastle.
Oh, my supervisor.
Yeah. So great. I mean, I have a question about the role of international initiatives and international organizations in Nepal. Of course, there was a flood of initiatives into Nepal, a great deal of concern around trafficking of women from Nepal. And I think kind of partly lots of people wanted to go to Kathmandu because they loved Kathmandu and so on. But there were all these initiatives. For example, you know, Amnesty International had an initiative with the bus drivers on the border of India to kind of flag and point out women who looked like they might be being trafficked. And the job was to deter the women from leaving Nepal and so on. And there was lots of all different types of initiatives and under the banner of anti-trafficking. And something I've wondered, and I would really love to have your views on, do these initiatives, which are often very well intentioned, actually end up reinforcing the stigma that women are facing? Whereas if, for example, we talked about fair work or fair migration and these kind of issues instead, it might be better to try and that might be more helpful to try and diminish some of the stigma. Anyway, I just really appreciate your views on that.
Very good question, Catherine. And when Diane and Nina, they were here through ESRC project, we were struggling with this question. And when we were interviewing, I managed to get Diane's meeting with one of the, CNN Hero NGO. which is basically, to me, locking women in and creating more stigma. So what I'm trying to say is that there are various versions of responses. The traditional way of responding is that, okay, poor you came back to be in safe side. I will locked in a shelter. I will feed you. I will give you everything. Donor is giving money. Okay, you are safe. And there is another version, more critical and a more human right approach version, that, as I mentioned, the Shakti Samua, which was part of Diane's and my work, that project we did under ESRC, that much more critical, challenging traditional way of approaching trafficking, and also the whole concept of welfare approach of development agencies. And they form their union, they fight back, and they did that advocacy, and they are influencing policy. That is much more human right approach. And there is another approach, international agency like TDH Home and a few other agencies. They are much more, again, funding local NGO just to create shelter and put women there and rescue women, bring them back, rescue from across the border, rescue within as well, and put them in shelter and feed them for how long? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then what? There is no answer about that. And creating shelter, through my own research, creating shelter means you are further stigmatizing. Because there were cases in Nepal when I started working on this issue that, okay, that is women's shelter, not traffic women, even prostitute shelter. They used to say that. Now the media is much more critical. They are not using that type of stigmatized phrases, but they're saying, oh, prostitute house, and there are prostitutes, they are sitting there, they are doing this. And then you are creating more vulnerability to those women. They are not being allowed to go out for the work. That is still happening. Few NGOs are still there, but this discourse is being challenged by new generation of activists and new generation of feminists, and also the traffic women's union themselves. And media, I must appreciate media, they are actually playing both roles. They are stigmatizing and publishing photos and all those things, they were happening, and we had big fight with media. It took long time to correct. But some of the media, actually, they are exposing this type of stigmatizing approach. Even they are challenging donors and questioning donors, what are you doing? And to be honest with you, the few Western writers, they publish book. One book is very famous in negative way. They sold. Right? That is basically is very much that book also contributed a lot to stigmatize women, to expose women's confidentiality and then their identity, and let community know that these women were bad. So still there are challenges, because the big powerful NGOs are awarded by CNN heroes and TRIP heroes, US State Department, and also the political connection, the domestic connection with the domestic politician and the corrupt group. So it's a link with that. But I must appreciate anti-slavery, Amnesty International, and Oxfam, and a few other to name. And the international agency, they are helping so much to empower traffic women and then new generation of activists so much. I think there are competing discourses, but the human rights approach is actually dominant one, which is good.
Great, thank you very much, Meena, for that.
Thanks, Meena. Thanks, Catherine. Great question again. And I mean, this issue of how trafficking is represented, I mean, it's not just in Nepal, of course, that we see it in Europe too. This kind of very stigmatizing representation, which of course also assumes or presupposes or represents trafficking as always being sex work related. And then you've got, you know, all sorts of assumptions in there about the negativity of sex work as not being work, essentially. So there's multiple overlapping discourses, but I think they're pretty prevalent everywhere, and it's quite a challenge to address some of them, not least because you know, migration organizations and migration scholars indeed kind of sometimes reinforce those perceptions in order to get media coverage or to get funding or whatever it might be. I mean, we see those things happening all the time. So Maria Rosa, you've got your hand up. So I don't know whether it's related to this question or something else, but the floor's yours again.
I can totally wait or write her an email. I was just wondering, I'm puzzled about what you said about the shelters for women. I mean, from my experience working on gender-based violence and working in shelter for women victims of abuses, the idea of the shelter is that for the first, let's say, 6 months, you need psychological and medical support. So you have it's a journey. So you have the first year where you are rebuilding yourself as a person, and then you start going through training and empowering workshops and so on. Because usually if you are trafficked when you are 16 or 18, you are still a kid. And the possibility that you have a proper formation, educational level and whatever are limited. So second year, you are maybe focusing on that level. And then there is the reinsertion into the society and so on. So I don't know, I'm a kind of a supporter of this kind of shelters. And now you just say that you see them, there is too much of a stigma towards them. I was just wondering if you can elaborate a bit more, because I have a positive view of them so far.
Okay, no. Sorry for not explaining that. I totally agree with you. I am also, actually, when I was working with Oxfam, before I started my PhD and joined IIM, I was working with Oxfam and supporting this returnee traffic women's union to create their little shelter for themselves and offer counseling and help them to negotiate with family and go for family reunion. I totally agree with that. That's what I'm saying, that human right approach shelter is that 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, depending, even the few weeks to few months, they can stay there immediately, and then they take time to reestablish their relationship and their support system back in community, and that is true. But here the shelter, I'm not agree with that. There are women in shelter for 8, 9, 10 years, whole life, and then the donor, probably the donor side as well. Donor keep funding those shelters. How many women you are supporting? And oh, please, donor, I have 100 women to feed. Please give me project for next 5 years. When I was working with the USAID, I had a big problem with the USAID itself, and they were also, I was managing large counter trafficking project for them, and the same problem I had with the NGO partner, Asia Foundation, and national NGO as well. They wanted, okay, we need money for shelter for 5 years to feed 100 women. Come on, you are not going to feed these women for 5 years. Start building their skill, building their confidence, and negotiating with family, engage with the community, policy makers, and help them to go back to their origin and get their civil and political right, and of course, economic right in the labor market. They don't want to do that. There are few women, as I mentioned earlier, they are internationally awarded, and even they appreciated, awarded by State Department back in Washington, DC, CNN hero. These are the NGOs, they are actually creating all this stigma, and they want to keep women for lifelong situation, just to attract donors' money. And here also the political issue, okay, look, I'm supporting 100 women, and you have to appreciate me as a national whatever. So that's what I'm saying, is that they want to consolidate, and they want to gain their social, cultural, political, economic power, and using these women who are rejected and stigmatized by their family and state, instead of helping them to regain their confidence and challenge society and go back to their origin. So it's a mix. But as I said earlier, that now the dominant trend is that it's the human right approach. So less sheltering, more confidence building, and helping them to return to their origin. Or if not origin, at least labor market, to become independent, economically independent.
Thank you. That's really useful to get that that clarification. I think, Maria Rosa, right?
Evan, can I say something on this?
Yeah, Anita, please.
I mean, it's again, this is not a question of whether it is bad or it is good, but I think it's also a question of what we missed. Because we always try to look at short-term fixes. If someone comes accepted back in the family, so we just put her in a shelter home. So I mean, by having these kind of reintegration models, what we did was we forgot the natural and a family way of reintegration. So we forgot what was the, what were the local kind of traditions of reintegration in such cases. And we never kind of tried for a family-based reintegration. We always thought that, okay, the family are not going to accept. So we never towards really making the family and the community accept these kind of, change their perception towards these people. So what we did instead was we put these women in the shelter homes. We have another set of awareness campaigns for the community. So we have been spending a lot of money for a long years without actually trying to address the root to address a better, trying to do it in a better way. I think we just went for something that's quick and short.
True.
Thanks, Anita, for that. I think I'm always reluctant to use the term root causes at the moment because it's become actually a sort of way of trying to do other things. But I think, addressing some of the things that you were talking about, Meena, at the beginning, in terms of not just the drivers of why people are ending up being trafficked or moving in the first place, but the consequences, the stigma that's attached to that upon return. I mean, that must surely be where the effort needs to go if there is a political or policy effort but then we are talking about overhauling patriarchy in years of particular ways in which, as you say, men within households or the intersection of men with other kinds of forms of cultural norm have allowed this to be the prevalent mode, I guess. So that's, I guess that's sometimes why when it comes to change and it comes to the role of international organizations, it's easier to put up a shelter, right, than to actually address some of those much more complex structural inequalities. And I think that's a challenge for MIDEQ, is how do we as MIDEQ, in terms of the theory of change, in terms of changing things, how do we make a difference, given those things are obviously rooted in, millennia of ways of being. And I think a lot of it is probably around changing the narrative. I mean, that's certainly one of our key theories of change, our pathways to change. And I think what you're doing, Meena, in your work and others, is trying to shift some of those narratives, by challenging this representation of women and in fact increasing the stigma rather than undermining it.
Yeah, also just to add that what you are saying, Heaven and Anita, that also this divide, right approach and welfare approach divide is not only Nepal, it's a global feminist division, because there are, the global level network, one following that human rights approach to empower traffic women themselves, not to call them victims, they are survivors, so they are like us, and help them to build confidence and to challenge this social structure and state mechanism. And there is another group of feminists, that anti-trafficking feminists, they prefer sheltering, and they prefer that very much patronized kind of responses, which will not help women to build their confidence, but instead of building confidence, they help women to become more dependent on foreign aid and the safe houses and all these things. So it's division is there, but also just to mention that when I was with Oxfam that time, when we were advocating for the UN optional protocol during 2097 to 2003, 4 years, I was very much with the global anti-trafficking feminist movement and also working with Oxfam. That time also, even in the UN system, we were totally divided. We're fighting each other and arguing each other and trying to prove that which is right and which is wrong. So that division actually contributed to optional protocol not to become a much more clear mechanism to support traffic survivor, whether it's a man or women or boys or girls. So it has an implication at the global level, but at least the research like MIDEQ we have been doing, at least we can try to unpack those in little our corridor level, and then we can make some changes at local level.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's a very good point at which to draw the discussion to a conclusion. We've actually run out of time in any case, but listen, Meena, it's been really interesting to learn more about your work, and thank you for your time and of course your contribution to the advisory board and the work of the hub more generally. And thanks to everybody who's engaged in this conversation and asked some really, really interesting questions. It's been a great discussion. Thanks also to, of course, Baindu and Daljit behind the scenes. for setting up the event. We will, as we say, we've recorded the event, so we'll make sure this goes on the MIDEQ website that other people can have a listen in and hear about what we're doing too. And if nothing else, I think this is, yeah, I mean, I was kind of aware of some of the broad trends, but just hearing how it plays out in very different contexts, I think is really important, because otherwise these narratives just become, they maintain their dominance because there's nothing particular to challenge them. That's been a really important contribution. Thank you, Meena.
Thank you, Heaven and the colleagues. That it was a great opportunity to share my research, and also actually I'm enjoying so much working with the MIDEQ team. So
brilliant.
Yeah, we'll keep engaging and we'll keep discussing these issues.
Absolutely, thank you. And our next Share Out event, I think, is in October. We have an event on social protection, I think. So if you're not already signed up to our kind of list, then please do so. Otherwise, we'll circulate details ASAP about that and confirm the time and day. So thanks, everybody. Thanks in particular to Meena, and
thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your days or evenings, depending on which time zone
Have a
you're
great
in.
day.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.